He paid me to clean his house, to be invisible. But when the most dangerous man in Seoul saw me teaching his little boy how to fight, he didn't fire me.
He didn't yell.
He just froze. And in that moment, I knew my secret was safe, because I saw the same secret hiding in his own eyes. This story changes everything. If you're ready for a binge that's all about hidden hearts, fierce protection, and the family we choose, hit subscribe right now. Because this story is for everyone who believes in second chances. Let's begin. The most feared man in Seoul stood frozen in the doorway of his son's playroom. They called him the Glacier. His new housekeeper, a woman with quiet eyes, was not cleaning. She was on the floor with his 8-year-old boy, Min-jun. She had his small hands wrapped around a wooden spoon. "This is not a toy," she said, her voice low and steady. "Your elbow tight to your side. Your breath out slow." She was teaching his frail, bookish son a defensive stance. A cold fire ignited in the Glacier's chest. He owned the city's darkness. He paid this woman to be invisible. His head bodyguard, a mountain of a man named Dae-shik, shifted behind him, ready to act. The Glacier lifted a single finger. "Stop." He watched. His son, who usually hunched his shoulders, now stood with a straight spine. The boy's eyes, often sad and distant, were sharp, locked on the spoon. The Glacier did not see a maid and a child. For one heart-stopping second, he saw a ghost. He saw his late wife, Min-jun's mother, in their old garden. She was guiding his own hands, years ago, teaching him how to prune a rose bush without harming it. "True strength is always gentle first," she had whispered. The memory was a physical blow to his ribs. He stepped back into the hallway, silent, unseen. In his soundproof office, he ordered a background check. The file came back too fast. Kim Soo-jin. Orphan. Former office cleaner. Spotless record. It was the kind of clean that only exists in fiction. He pulled up the security feed on his monitor. Soo-jin was now reading a book to Min-jun, but her eyes kept lifting from the page. They scanned the large garden wall, then the street beyond the gate. It wasn't the glance of a curious employee. It was a tactical sweep. She was looking for threats.
But why?
He dismissed Dae-shik for the night. Alone, he walked to his private study, a room no servant entered. From a locked drawer, he removed a single, framed photograph. It showed his wife, laughing, holding a toddler Min-jun. He had built his empire to protect what was left of that light. Now, a stranger was in his home, changing his son. He didn't know if that was a good thing or the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to them.
Dinner was served.
Soo-jin brought the dishes, her movements efficient and silent. Min-jun did not look at his father. "The new teacher at the library showed us how to make a paper wolf today," the boy said, to no one in particular. Soo-jin, placing a bowl of rice near the Glacier, paused for a fraction of a second. The Glacier caught it, a flicker of a smile at the corner of her mouth.
Pride.
That night, the Glacier stood in the dark hall outside his son's room. He heard the boy's voice, clear and confident, practicing the Korean alphabet. Then he heard Soo-jin's calm reply, correcting his pronunciation, not with softness, but with a firm expectation that he could do better. It was the voice of a teacher, the voice of a soldier. The Glacier leaned his head against the cool wall. For the first time in years, he felt the ice around his heart crack. And he was terrified of what might be underneath. The old head housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, found him at dawn in his office. She had been with his wife's family. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling. "That woman? Soo-jin. I saw her in the East Garden before sunrise. She was not walking. She was moving, like a shadow between the trees. She was testing the locks on the old gate." Mrs. Choi clutched her hands. "She is not what she seems." The Glacier sent 3 men to discreetly recheck every detail of Soo-jin's past. He then did something he never did. He went to the second-floor sitting room during the day. Soo-jin was dusting. Min-jun was at her feet, building a complex block tower. "Mrs. Choi says you were in the East Garden," the Glacier stated, his voice like gravel. Soo-jin did not jump. She slowly turned and met his gaze. The directness was a shock. "I heard a noise last night," she said.
A metal sound.
I investigated. It was a stray cat. The lock on the old gate is rusted. It should be replaced. Her explanation was perfect. Too perfect. Min-jun looked up, his eyes wide at his father's presence in this sunny room. "Appa, Sujin said the best warriors are the ones who avoid the fight. Is that true?" The question hung in the air. The glacier looked from his son's hopeful face to Sujin's unreadable one. "It is true," he finally said, the words strange in his mouth. He saw Sujin's shoulders relax, just a millimeter. He had given her a silent answer. "I am not your enemy. Not today." He turned and left, feeling her eyes on his back. His men reported back. The office she supposedly cleaned had been demolished 2 years prior. The orphanage listed had no record of a Kim Sujin. She was a ghost. That afternoon, he watched from his window. Sujin took Min-jun into the small courtyard. She began a slow, deliberate series of stretches. Tai Chi Min-jun mirrored her, his small limbs copying her flow. The glacier saw it then. Her grace was not that of a dancer. It was controlled power, muscle memory from a different life. A call came in. A business rival was making a move on his docks. Violence was brewing. As Dae-shik laid out the plan for a counterstrike, the glacier's mind was elsewhere. He pictured the courtyard, the serene look on his son's face as he moved beside her. "Change the plan," the glacier growled. "No guns. Make it a message, not a war." He hung up, shocked at his own order. He was choosing a quieter path. For the first time, he was thinking about the example he set. That evening, passing the kitchen, he saw Sujin alone. She was at the sink, but she wasn't washing. She was staring at her own reflection in the dark window, her expression one of deep, bone-tired sorrow. It was a look he recognized. It was the face he saw in the mirror every night. The face of someone who had lost everything and was haunted by it. She suddenly sensed him, and the mask snapped back into place, polite and empty. But he had seen it. The real her. Later, a small, folded piece of paper was slipped under his study door. It was a child's drawing from Min-jun. It showed 3 stick figures, a large one, a small one, and a medium one in the middle, holding their hands. At the bottom, in shaky letters, "My family." The glacier stared at it until his vision blurred. The medium stick figure had a small, yellow circle above its head. A halo, like his wife used to draw. The glacier knew, with a chilling certainty, that the drawing was not a wish. In his son's mind, it was already real, and that made Sujin the biggest threat and the most precious secret he had ever known. The photograph fell from the book she was dusting. It was old, tucked inside a volume of poetry. Sujin picked it up, expecting a family portrait. It was a picture of the glacier, maybe 15 years younger. He was on a beach, not in Seoul. He was smiling a real, easy smile, his arm around a beautiful, laughing woman. Min-jun's mother. Sujin's breath caught. She knew that face. Not from gossip. From a different, blurred memory she tried every day to forget. She carefully slid the photo back into the pages. Her hands were unsteady. That night, after Min-jun was asleep, she walked to the family shrine room, a place she'd never entered. A single portrait of the woman was there, with fresh fruit. Sujin knelt, not to pray, but to look. The details were undeniable. The kind eyes. The specific way her hairline curved. This was the woman from the bus station a lifetime ago. The one who'd given a scared, runaway teenager a warm bun and money for a taxi, telling her, "Go somewhere safe, child." The glacier found her there, kneeling in the dim light. He didn't speak for a long moment. "You knew her," he said. It wasn't a question. Sujin didn't turn. "A long time ago. She was kind to me when no one else was." Her voice was thick. "I didn't know when I took this job. I needed work that asked no questions. I didn't know this was her home." He moved to stand beside her, looking at his wife's portrait. "How did she die?" Sujin asked quietly. The room went cold. "A car accident," he said, the official lie smooth and practiced. but his jaw was clenched. Sujin finally looked up at him. She saw not a gangster, but a man holding a mountain of grief. She saw the truth he wouldn't say. It wasn't an accident. I will protect him, she said, her words simple and absolute. With my life. He believed her. In that moment, he believed this stranger more than he believed his own men. The next morning, Minjun had a nightmare. His cries echoed through the hall. The glacier, moving from his room, saw Sujin's door already open. He followed the sound to his son's room. She was already there, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding Minjun. Not shushing him, but speaking in a low, steady voice. The fear is real. Feel it, then let it go. Breathe it out. You are safe here. You are strong here. The boy's sobs subsided into hiccups, his small fist clutching her plain nightshirt. The glacier watched, a foreign feeling swelling in his chest. It was envy. Envy of her simple, direct comfort. He was the boy's father, the provider of everything, yet he was a storm cloud in the room. She was the safe harbor. He retreated before they saw him. That day, he instructed Mrs. Choi to give Sujin access to the family accounts for groceries. A test. A gesture of trust. Sujin received the news with a silent nod, no reaction. Later, a plain envelope was left in the glacier's car. Inside were surveillance photos. Of Minjun walking to school. Of Sujin in the market. The last photo was of Sujin, years younger, in a military uniform, but it was blurred. A typed note read, "Your new flower has thorns." Who is she really protecting? The glacier crumpled the note. The threat was no longer just from the outside. It was inside his walls, wearing an apron. He had to know who she was before his enemies used her against him. A delivery man came to the service entrance. Too confident. His eyes scanned the kitchen, not the package. Sujin was wiping the counter. She saw his hand dip into his jacket. Before he could move, she stepped forward, her body smoothly between him and the hallway where Minjun's laughter echoed. "Sign here," she said, her voice pleasant, but she shoved the clipboard hard into his stomach. He grunted, the move looking like an accident. His hand came out of his jacket empty. He left quickly. She didn't tell the glacier. She didn't need to. Dae-shik reported it, having watched the exchange on security feed. She moved like she knew what he was going to do before he did. Dae-shik said, grudging respect in his tone. The glacier reviewed the footage. Sujin's intervention was a masterpiece of subtle violence. She hadn't just reacted. She had controlled the entire encounter without raising an alarm. She was a professional. The glacier confronted her in the garden. The delivery man. Sujin didn't stop weeding the flower bed his wife had planted. He was armed. A small knife. He was assessing the house layout. An advanced scout. She spoke with cold certainty. "Why didn't you raise the alarm?" he demanded. She finally looked up. "And send your men in, guns out, in front of your son? Fear is a weapon. I chose not to give it to him." Her logic disarmed him completely. That Saturday, the glacier canceled all his meetings. He told Minjun they would go to the zoo. The boy's joy was instantaneous. Then, hesitantly, Minjun asked, "Can Sujin come too?" The question hung in the air. A family outing. The glacier nodded slowly. The trip was a tense operation disguised as fun. Dae-shik and 2 other men followed at a distance. Sujin never looked at them. Her attention was on the crowds, the exits, the people who lingered too long. By the lion enclosure, a tourist group surged, separating them for a moment. The glacier felt a spike of panic, grabbing for Minjun's hand. But the boy was already there, Sujin's hand firmly on his shoulder, her body a barrier against the crowd. Minjun, oblivious, pointed at the lions. "Look. He's the boss, right, Appa?" The glacier looked at the powerful, isolated animal. Then at Sujin, guarding his cub. "Yes," he said. "But even bosses need help." On the drive home, Minjun fell asleep in the back seat, his head leaning against Sujin's arm. She didn't pull away. She sat rigid, but her gaze out the window was soft. The glacier watched her in the rear-view mirror. He saw her gently adjust her shoulder to make the boy more comfortable. It was a mother's gesture. "Thank you," he said, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "It was for more than today." She gave one slow, silent nod. That night, the glacier received the full report from his investigators. The blurred photo was clarified. It was indeed Soo-jin. Her unit insignia was from a clandestine branch of the National Intelligence Service, disbanded after a scandal. She wasn't just former military. She was former spy. Her specialty, close protection and infiltration. The final line of the report read, "She was declared deceased in a covert op 5 years ago." Her file was sealed. Someone very powerful wanted her erased. The rival boss, a flashy young gangster named June, sent a formal invitation. A meeting at a neutral hotel to discuss territory. It was a blatant trap. The glacier knew he had to go, or show weakness. As Dae-shik prepared the team, the glacier gave a second, private order. "If anything happens to me at that meeting, your only priority is to get my son and the maid to the safe house in Busan. Follow her lead if you have to." The morning of the meeting, the house was quiet. Soo-jin served breakfast, her face a calm mask. As the glacier stood to leave, she spoke without looking at him. The hotel service elevators connect directly to the underground garage. The security cameras on the third hallway have a 90-second blind spot at 25 past the hour. He stared at her. She had researched the battleground. She was giving him an exit strategy. The meeting was a tense performance. June smirked, surrounded by his men. He made vague threats, trying to provoke a reaction. The glacier, thinking of the blind spot at 25 past, played the board, unimpressed elder. At 20 minutes past, he made a show of checking his watch. "You have nothing new to say. We're done." He stood, his men forming up. June, thrown off his timing, let him walk out, right into the window Soo-jin had described. Back home, the victory felt hollow. The threat was now open. June would escalate. The glacier found Soo-jin in the kitchen, sharpening the kitchen knives with a methodical, expert rhythm. "He will come here next," she stated. "He sees your son as your weakness, and me as an obstacle." The glacier leaned against the counter. "Why are you still here? You know what I am. You know the danger." She put the knife down. "I made a promise to a kind woman at a bus station. And now to her son." Min-jun, sensing the tension, began acting out. He refused to do his schoolwork, throwing a tantrum. The glacier, frustrated, raised his voice. The boy flinched. Soo-jin stepped in. She didn't scold Min-jun. She took him to the courtyard. "Your anger is a fire," she told him. "I will teach you to build it, control it, so it warms you and doesn't burn everything down." She began teaching him controlled breathing, turning rage into focus. The glacier watched, learning the lesson himself. Mrs. Choi brought tea to the glacier study. Her old hands were shaking. "The men talk," she whispered. "They say June is gathering many fighters. He is angry you walked away from his trap." She paused. "They also say he has offered money for information about the woman. He wants to know who she is." The glacier thanked her, his mind racing. June's target had shifted. It wasn't just about territory anymore. It was personal. That evening, for the first time, the glacier did not eat alone in his study. He ate at the small kitchen table with Min-jun. Soo-jin served the food and turned to leave. "Sit," the glacier said. It wasn't a command from a boss. It was a request, rough with unfamiliarity. She hesitated, then sat. The meal was silent, but not uncomfortable. Min-jun, sitting between them, beamed. It was a simple picture. A man, a boy, and a woman who guarded them both. Later, a text alert chimed on a burner phone the glacier kept for worst-case scenarios. It was from an unknown number. It was a single photo, taken from a long lens. It showed the three of them at that kitchen table, framed in the window. The text beneath read, "A cute family. It would be a shame if something spoiled it." The glacier's blood ran cold. June wasn't just gathering fighters. He was already watching. The walls had been breached. The final fight was no longer at the docks or a hotel. It was coming to his home. The photo changed everything. The house was now a fortress. Tae-sik's men patrolled the walls. The glacier moved through the rooms, a silent storm. He found Soo-jin in the library, showing Min-jun how to bind a book with simple string. A skill is a tool you always have, she was saying. The glacier watched them, the threatening photo burning in his mind. He cleared his throat. Min-jun, Mrs. Choi has your snack. When the boy was gone, the glacier placed the burner phone on the table, the photo facing her. Soo-jin's calm didn't break, but her eyes turned to ice. He's here, in the neighborhood, watching. She pointed to a tree line visible in the blurred background of the photo. This angle is from the old apartment building across the northern street. It's scheduled for demolition. Easy to hide in. She had located the sniper's nest in under 10 seconds. We leave tonight. The three of us. The safe house in Busan, the glacier stated. Soo-jin shook her head once. Running tells him he's won. He'll chase. It's harder to defend a moving vehicle and an unknown route. She met his gaze. Here, we know the ground. Here, we have control. He was used to giving orders that shook the city. Her quiet refusal, based in tactical logic, left him speechless. You propose we stay? As targets? I propose we bait the trap he's already set, she said. Her plan was audacious. Simple. They would appear to follow his expectation, flee in panic. But the car would be a decoy, driven by Tae-sik. They would remain in the house, which Jun's men would then invade, thinking it was empty. And then, the glacier asked, a grim respect growing in his chest. Then they are in a box, Soo-jin said. And we close the lid. He agreed. The preparations were made in secret. Only Tae-sik and two most trusted men knew. That afternoon, the glacier gathered important papers. From his wife's old jewelry box, he took a simple jade hairpin. He found Soo-jin in her small room, checking the simple lock on her window. If this goes wrong, he said, his voice rough. You take him. You run. Do not look back. He held out the hairpin. Sell this if you need to. It was hers. Soo-jin looked at the pin, then at his face. She didn't take it. It will not go wrong. For the first time, he saw not just certainty in her eyes, but a flicker of shared fear. Not for herself. For him. For their family. The word hung unspoken between them. She finally took the pin, not putting it away, but holding it tightly in her hand. Thank you, she whispered. Night fell. The decoy car, with a figure disguised as the glacier in the back, sped away from the house. From a hidden panel in the library wall, the glacier, Soo-jin, and Min-jun watched the monitors. For 20 minutes, nothing. Then, shadows moved over the garden wall. 6 men, dressed in black, slipped into the compound. They moved toward the house. The trap was sprung. Soo-jin turned to Min-jun, whose face was pale. Remember your breathing. Be my brave warrior. Be still. She then looked at the glacier and nodded. It was time. The invaders entered through the kitchen. They were professionals but arrogant. They believed the house was empty. The glacier and Soo-jin moved separately through the servant passages he'd almost forgotten. They were ghosts in their own home. Soo-jin's first move was not an attack. She cut the main breaker. The house was plunged into deep, moonlit shadow. The invaders whispered curses, filled the silent halls. The glacier cornered one man in the study. It was fast and brutal. The man was young, overconfident. The glacier disarmed him with a move he hadn't used in years. He held the man by the throat against a bookcase. Who sent you? He growled. The man spat a name. June. Before the glacier could react, a shape emerged from behind the curtain. A 7th man, a backup. He raised a gun. There was a soft thwack. The gunman cried out, dropping his weapon, clutching his hand. Embedded in it was the jade hairpin. Soo-jin stepped from the shadows, a fireplace poker in her other hand. She moved forward and struck the gunman's temple with precise force. He crumpled. She retrieved her pin, wiped it on her pants, and gave the glacier a single look. The first man, seeing this, fainted from sheer terror. They regrouped in the central hall.
4 down.
2, maybe 3, remaining. Minjun was safe in the panic room. But then, a sound from upstairs. A child's stifled cough. Minjun was allergic to dust. The panic room was dusty. The invaders heard it. They converged on the second floor. The Glacier and Sujin raced up the main stairs, no longer hiding. They reached the hallway just as 2 men were prying at the hidden door to the panic room. The Glacier engaged one. The other turned, drawing a knife, and lunged at the Glacier's exposed back. Sujin didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the path, taking the knife slash across her upper arm. She cried out, more in anger than pain, and disarmed the man with a furious twist of his wrist, dropping him with a knee to the chest. The Glacier finished his opponent and rushed to her. Blood soaked through her sleeve. His world narrowed to that dark stain. Rage, white and hot, consumed him. He secured the last man, his movements more violent than necessary. The threat was neutralized. In the sudden quiet, he tore a strip from his own shirt and bound her arm, his hands trembling. "You are hurt," he said, the words choking him. "It's nothing," she breathed, her face pale but determined. Behind them, the panic room door slid open. Minjun stood there, tears streaming down his face. He didn't run to his father. He ran to Sujin, wrapping his arms carefully around her waist. "You're bleeding," he sobbed. Sujin placed her good hand on his head, pulling him close. Over the boy's head, her eyes met the Glacier's. In that shared look was the truth. The fight was over. They had won. But they had also crossed a line. They were no longer a boss and a maid. They were a unit, a family, forged in the dark. The cleanup was clinical. Dae-shik returned, his decoy mission successful. The captured men were taken away to deliver a message. The house was secured. A discreet doctor came, stitching the deep cut on Sujin's arm. She refused painkillers. Minjun refused to leave her side, falling asleep in a chair by her bed. The Glacier stood in the doorway, watching the doctor work. Every stitch felt like it was going into his own skin. When the doctor left, the Glacier entered the small room. Sujin was propped up, her arm bandaged. "You saved my life," he said. "It was a debt he could never repay." "I protected the father of my child," she replied quietly. The words were out before she could stop them. A silence louder than any gunshot filled the room. Minjun slept on unaware. Sujin looked down, avoiding his stunned gaze. He knelt beside the bed, his imposing frame making the room feel smaller. "Say that again," he whispered. She shook her head, a tear finally escaping. "He is not my blood, but he is my heart. You both are." The Glacier, a man who commanded with fear, reached out a hand. He hesitated, then gently wiped the tear from her cheek with his thumb. It was the softest either of them had been touched in a decade. He did not leave that night. He sat in the chair opposite Minjun, watching over them both. In the early hours, Sujin spoke into the darkness. "My name is not Kim Sujin. It was Park Ji-won. My team was betrayed. My partner died. I was set up to take the blame. I had to disappear." She was giving him the last piece of herself, the ultimate trust. "The man who betrayed us, he works for someone much bigger than June. He is why I always watch the windows." The Glacier listened, the puzzle pieces snapping into a terrible picture. Her enemy was not a street gang. It was a serpent in the government, a corrupt official using criminals like June as tools. This enemy had endless resources. He will find out June failed. He will look deeper. "He will find me here," she said, her voice tired. "I should go. I am putting you in more danger." "No," the Glacier said, the word final. "This is your home. He is your son. He searched for the word. "I am your partner." He stood. "Let them come. They think they hunt a ghost and a gangster. They will find a fortress." For the first time, a real, small smile touched her lips. It transformed her entire face. He saw the woman she might have been, before the world broke her. The next morning, Minjun drew a new picture. 3 stick figures again. But the middle figure now had a blue scribble on its arm. A bandage. He presented it to Soo-jin. "This is us," he said. Then he pointed to the large stick figure. "Appa was scared when you got hurt. His face was like this." The boy made a comically worried expression. The glacier, bringing in a breakfast tray, froze. Soo-jin looked at him, and a real, quiet laugh escaped her. The sound was like sunshine in the damaged house. A week passed in tense calm. Soo-jin's arm healed. The routine returned, but everything was different. The glacier began joining them for every meal. He listened as Soo-jin taught Min-jun history, correcting her gently when her facts were from a soldier's textbook, not a schoolbook. He found himself learning, too. One evening, he asked her to walk in the garden with him. Not as guard and boss. Just a walk. They walked in silence for a while. "What was her name?" "Your partner," he asked. "Kang Dae," she said. "He was a good man. He believed in the mission." She stopped, looking at the rose bushes his wife had planted. "I believe your wife would be proud of the man Min-jun is becoming." The glacier nodded, a lump in his throat. "She would be thankful for you."
He paused.
"I am thankful for you." He took a step closer. The space between them hummed with everything unsaid. He slowly reached for her good hand. She let him take it. Her hand was small, calloused, and strong in his. They stood there, holding hands under the moon, two broken people finding a moment of peace. No words were needed. It was the first chapter of a new story for both of them. The peace shattered the next day. Dae-shik intercepted a police report. A body was found in the river.
June.
It was not the glacier's work. The method was professional, quiet. An assassination. The message was clear. June had failed a more powerful master, and had been erased. The glacier showed the report to Soo-jin. Her face went pale. "It's him. My old enemy. He's cleaning up loose ends." June was a loose end. I am a loose end. The enemy had made his move. By killing June, he removed the noisy, obvious threat. Now, the threat would be invisible. A bureaucratic inquiry, tax inspectors, a sudden audit of the glacier's legitimate businesses, all tools to pressure and probe. "He will use the law to flank us," Soo-jin said. "To find a legal way to separate you from Min-jun, or to expose me." The glacier called an emergency meeting with his accountants and lawyers. He began the complex process of legitimizing his empire, moving dirty money into clean investments. It was a gamble. It would make him weaker in the short term, less able to fight a street war. But it would build a legal fortress for his family. He was no longer fighting for territory. He was fighting for a future. That night, he gave Soo-jin a phone and a new identity packet. "Park Ji-won," he said. "If they come, if it falls apart, this is your life back. A clean one. A small apartment, a job as a librarian, far from here." She stared at the documents. "And you?" she asked. "I will be the wall that holds them back long enough for you two to disappear." She threw the packet on the table.
"No.
We are a unit. We stand together." Min-jun, sensing the new fear, started wetting the bed again. The old trauma returned. Soo-jin sat with him for hours. The glacier, instead of retreating, did too. The three of them sat on the floor of the boys' room, building a gigantic block city. They didn't speak of threats or enemies. They spoke about bridges and castles. For a few hours, they were just a family. It was the strongest defense they had built yet. The first legal letter arrived. The National Tax Service was launching a comprehensive audit of the glacier's largest holding company. It was the expected opening move. His lawyers mobilized. The house became a different kind of war room, filled with spreadsheets and legal briefs instead of weapons. The glacier fell out of his depth, a king of the shadows blinded by sunlight. Soo-jin proved her worth in this new war. Her intelligence training included financial forensics. She sat with the accountants, her sharp mind finding discrepancies and potential vulnerabilities faster than they could. She was building their legal defense. One afternoon, she pointed to a series of transactions. "This shell company. It's a funnel. But it's not yours, is it?" The glacier's head accountant turned pale. It was a trap set within his own books by a corrupt official years ago. They had found the enemy weapon. By exposing this planted funnel, they could turn the audit back on their attacker. It was a dangerous game. It would mean admitting to some lesser crimes to avoid bigger ones. It would mean the glacier might face some prison time. The thought of leaving Minjun, of leaving her, was a new kind of terror. He made the decision alone on the rooftop. Going to prison was a death sentence for a man like him. But it was a death that would give them life. He would take the fall for the planted crimes, claim he was cleaning up his own mess. It would satisfy the courts and, more importantly, it would draw out the corrupt official when he thought the glacier was defeated and behind bars. He explained his plan to Sujin that evening. She was furious. "It is a surrender," she argued. "It is a tactical retreat," he corrected. "I go inside. You, with Dae-shik's help, use the evidence we've gathered to expose the official from the outside. You destroy him legally. Then I get out. We win." He cupped her face. "You have to let me do this. To protect you. To protect our son." The word "our" hung between them. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "I waited my whole life to find a place to belong. I will not lose it now." He kissed her forehead, a tender, heartbreaking gesture. "You won't. This is how we keep it." They stayed like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other. The plan was set in motion. The glacier gave Dae-shik his final orders. "Your loyalty now is to her."
To them.
"You follow Park Ji-won as you followed me." Dae-shik, the hardened warrior, bowed deeply to Sujin. It was a transfer of power. The next morning, the glacier dressed in a simple, expensive suit. He knelt and hugged Minjun tightly. "Appa has to go away for a little while. You listen to Sujin. You be strong." He stood and faced Sujin. He didn't hug her. He simply took her hand and placed a small, smooth stone in it. It was a river stone worn by time. "To remind you," he said, "that even the hardest rock is shaped by persistent water. We will persist." He turned and walked out the door with the waiting lawyers, not looking back. He couldn't. Sujin held the stone, watching the car disappear. Minjun clutched her leg. She looked down at the boy, then at the stone, then at the house that was now hers to defend. The battle had moved from the garden wall to the courthouse, and her soldier was walking into a cage. She squared her shoulders. The quiet maid was gone. In her place stood Park Ji-won, protector, strategist, and the heart of a family. The war was not over. It had just changed shape. The house was empty without him. The silence was a heavy thing. Sujin moved through the days with a cold focus. She was no longer a maid. She was a commander. With Dae-shik as her lieutenant, she orchestrated the counterattack. Her first order, sell the mansion. It was a target. They moved to a secure, modern apartment under the new identity he had given her. To Minjun, she said, "This is a mission. Our mission is to bring Appa home." The boy, drawing strength from her certainty, stopped wetting the bed. She met with the glacier's lawyers, posing as a new forensic consultant hired before his incarceration. Using the evidence of the planted shell company, she built a case that traced the corruption up the chain. It led to a powerful man in the Ministry of Justice, a man named Director Kwon, the same man who had signed her unit's death warrant years ago. The enemy had a face. This was no longer just about protecting a family. It was about justice. Inside the prison, the glacier was a king in exile. Respect and fear followed him. He kept to himself, spending his time reading legal books, understanding the system that held him. He received one coded message through his lawyer. "The river shapes the stone. We persist." It was her message. It was enough. He began gathering his own information from the inside, listening to the whispers of corrupt guards who might be connected to Kwon. Sujin's investigation hit a wall. Director Kwon was too careful. The evidence was circumstantial. They needed something undeniable. A direct connection. She realized the only way was to bait him, to make him panic and move openly. She leaked a carefully crafted rumor to a financial reporter that an imprisoned businessman was preparing to reveal a high-level bribery scheme involving the Justice Ministry to secure a reduced sentence. The rumor spread. Director Kwon reacted. Soo-jin monitored his digital footprint. He began moving money, erasing files, making frantic, encrypted calls. One call was traced to a private security agency with a violent reputation. The call was an order, not for the Glacier, but for the asset in the woman's care. Kwon wasn't coming for the Glacier in prison. He was coming for Min-jun, to use the boy as a final, permanent piece of leverage to ensure silence. The threat was immediate and terrifying. Soo-jin doubled Min-jun's protection. Dae-shik moved into the apartment's second bedroom. The boy's world shrank to these safe rooms. He asked every night, "Is Appa safe? Are we safe?" Soo-jin always answered, "We are together. That is our safety." She began teaching him not just to be a warrior, but to be a survivor. How to hide, how to be silent, how to call for help on a burner phone. One rainy afternoon, the trap was sprung, but not where she expected. The Glacier's lawyer called, his voice strained. A riot had been instigated in the prison's maximum security wing. In the chaos, the Glacier had been attacked by 2 inmates with shivs. He was in the infirmary. His condition was unknown. The message was clear. Kwon could reach anywhere. Soo-jin's hands shook for the first time since the knife slash. The fear was paralyzing. Min-jun looked at her pale face. "Is it Appa?" She could only nod. The boy squared his little shoulders. "Then we have to be stronger. You taught me that." Her student was teaching the teacher. She took a deep breath. The fear turned back into iron resolve. The attack in prison was the mistake. The Glacier survived. He had anticipated the move, and a guard loyal to him, not to Kwon, intervened. The 2 attackers, before being taken to solitary, gave up a name under persuasion. It was the direct link to Kwon's security chief. The Glacier got this information to his lawyer, who brought it to Soo-jin. It was the final piece. The undeniable connection between Kwon and criminal violence. Soo-jin now had everything: financial records, the shell company trap, phone records, and now a witness statement linking Kwon to attempted murder. She packaged it not for the police, but for 3 major news networks and the National Anti-Corruption Agency. She sent it simultaneously, under the pseudonym The River Stone. The story exploded by morning. Director Kwon's face was on every screen, accused of corruption, conspiracy, and attempted murder. With the media storm raging, Kwon made his last, desperate play. He knew where they were. He sent his remaining hired men to the apartment in a daylight raid to seize Min-jun before the authorities could take him. Alarms blared as the men breached the building's lobby. Dae-shik barred the apartment door. "Take the boy." "Fire escape," he yelled at Soo-jin. She grabbed Min-jun's hand. They fled to the rooftop, the sound of crashing doors and Dae-shik's shouts echoing behind them. On the windy rooftop, there was nowhere else to run. The door to the stairs burst open. 2 of Kwon's men emerged. Soo-jin pushed Min-jun behind a ventilation unit. "Close your eyes and count," she ordered. She faced the men, the old fire in her eyes. She had no weapon but her hands and the training that had defined her life. The fight was short, brutal, and decisive. She used their momentum against them, disarming one, using his own gun to subdue the other. She stood over them, breathing hard, her bandaged arms screaming in pain. Sirens wailed below. The police, tipped by the news story, had arrived. Director Kwon was arrested at his ministry office in front of his staff. The siege of the apartment was over. Dae-shik, bruised but standing, secured the hallway. Soo-jin gathered a trembling Min-jun into her arms. "It's over," she whispered into his hair. "The bad man is gone." Weeks later, the legal machinery turned in their favor. With Kwon's scheme exposed, the charges against the Glacier were reviewed and reduced for his cooperation. The day he was released was bright and clear.